Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I woke up to a text alert at 3:30 in the morning. Storage unit accessed, code verified. I sat straight up in bed. Jake was still asleep next to me, snoring lightly, totally unaware. My heart was already pounding. No one should have been in that unit, not at that hour. I only used it for business inventory, vintage electronics, some boxed collectibles I sold online, and backup files for my bookkeeping. I barely even went there myself unless I had a shipment to organize. I opened the app that controlled the storage facility cameras. The live feed loaded. There was movement inside, shelf 3, the one where I kept the file box with cash sales receipts and spare invoice copies. I watched as someone moved through it, flipping through folders and lifting boxes like they knew exactly where to look. I didn't recognize the figure from the angle at first, but the way they stood, the way they moved, something about it stuck in my gut. I rolled out of bed, slipped into the hallway, and opened the vendor payment app on my phone. I almost dropped it. Over $30,000 gone. The transaction history showed a string of payments over the last 2 days, all funneled to a company called Pine Bluff Freight Solutions. Never heard of it. I didn't use them. I handled most deliveries myself with help. That's when my brain started piecing it together. Greg. My stepbrother Greg had been helping out for the past few months, ex-cop turned consultant. After he got laid off from the department, he asked if I had any work. I figured why not. It was part-time, and I trusted him. He knew the vendor schedules. He had the code to the storage unit. He'd been using my laptop in the office last week. Said he was checking availability for a courier run. He also had my payment app login. Said it was easier if he could schedule pickups himself. I knew better than to give that kind of access to anyone. But it was Greg. I'd known him since I was 10. He watched me grow up. He was supposed to have my back. I felt this cold wave hit my stomach. I knew I couldn't ignore it. The company name, the timing, the missing cash, the footage, it all lined up. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I walked back to the bedroom, phone still glowing in my hand, and stared at Jake. He had no clue what was coming. None of us did. I opened the audit software on my office server and started pulling the logs. I got dressed in under 2 minutes and called the vendor payment company's customer service line before the sun was even up. I wasn't going to wait. Not when 30 grand just vanished. The rep sounded half awake. "Can I have your account email, please?" I gave it to her and pushed past the urge to yell. She started clicking away. I paced the office floor, barefoot, feeling the cold tile through my heels. "Okay, I see 5 transfers over the last 48 hours to Pine Bluff Freight Solutions," she said. "All of them were verified from your usual IP address." "What?" "Same IP you normally use," she repeated, like that made it okay. "No flags for suspicious login activity." I rubbed my forehead. "So you're telling me someone used my own network, my own account, and you didn't flag that?" She hesitated. "We recommend enabling two-factor." I had two-factor, but the app was installed on my laptop. Someone used my office system. That's when I stopped pacing. I sat down hard in my chair, heart racing, and opened my audit software. I'd installed click tracking last year when I brought on part-time help, just to keep track of activity, nothing fancy. I never thought I'd need it for something like this. I pulled up the logs from the last 48 hours and sorted by user activity, my profile, Jake's guest profile, and Greg's. He'd logged in under mine. Didn't even bother making a fake account. Mouse tracking showed a long session last night. The cursor had hovered over the payment dashboard, clicked into vendor transfers, and copied routing numbers from a notepad file. Then he opened the shipping scheduler, not to book real deliveries, but to mark them complete. Fake jobs checked off and closed. I opened the timestamps and matched them with the bank withdrawals. They lined up almost to the second. He knew what he was doing. Then I checked the file access logs, folders labeled 2023 invoices, high-value orders, and cash receipts. All opened during the same session. He was in and out of my records like he owned the place. I opened my office security cam next. The playback feed was grainy, but it was clear enough. There he was, Greg, walking into the warehouse just after 11 p.m. Same hoodie he always wore. He looked up at the camera once, didn't even flinch. He unlocked the storage room with my key fob, walked straight to the shelves, and started pulling down boxes. He flipped through files like he knew exactly what he was after. At one point, he took his phone out and snapped a few pictures. There were no deliveries scheduled, No pickups, no reason at all for him to be there. I just stared at the screen. This wasn't some stupid mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He was in my system, my files, my money. I wanted to believe maybe there was another explanation, something I missed. But the data didn't lie. He broke in, stole from me, and tried to cover it up with fake logistics. Jake came downstairs around then, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing up?" "Checking something," I said, not looking up. He walked into the kitchen, made himself some coffee, and didn't ask again. He had no clue. I started copying the logs and video footage onto a thumb drive, organized everything. Time-stamped screenshots, click reports, file access records. It was all there, bulletproof. This wasn't just some sloppy theft. This was calculated, planned, systematic. Greg had been around me long enough to know how I worked. He'd watched me build the whole business from a garage side hustle into something real. And now he was using that knowledge to bleed it dry. I stared at the transfer totals one last time. $32,456 gone. I pulled up my contact list and scrolled to Detective Laura Navarro. It was time to move. I drove straight to the head office of my payment vendor that morning. Didn't even wait for traffic to die down. Walked in with a laptop bag full of proof and a folder of printed logs. I must have looked pissed because the receptionist didn't ask questions, just pointed me toward the branch manager's office. Her name was Angela, mid-40s, sharp suit, no-nonsense posture. She looked me up and down like she was trying to decide if I was some crank with a PayPal glitch or someone worth listening to. "Show me what you've got," she said, sliding her keyboard aside. I pulled up the click logs first. Mouse activity, file access, timestamps. Then the camera footage. Greg unlocking my storage room and tearing through the shelves. Finally, the payment trail. 5 separate transfers to Pine Bluff Freight Solutions, totaling just over $32,000. I had it all lined up. Angela didn't say much at first. She scrolled, clicked, leaned in closer. About 10 minutes in, she sat back and exhaled through her nose. "This wasn't a hack," she said. "This was someone inside your circle." "Yeah," I said. "My stepbrother. He helps with vendor scheduling, had full access." She gave me this look, like part sympathy, part "what the hell were you thinking?" "Well," she said finally, "you're lucky you caught it fast. We can reverse the last 2 payments. The earlier ones already cleared. I'll have our fraud division flag the receiving account. You'll need to report this to law enforcement. We can't proceed without a formal case number." I nodded. "Already planned on it." Angela printed the transaction log, stamped it, and handed it back to me. "Bring that to whoever's handling your case. We'll stay in contact once they open a file." As soon as I stepped outside, I called Navarro. She picked up halfway through the first ring. "This is Navarro." "Hey, it's me. I've got solid proof. Click logs, IP history, file access, security footage of him in the unit. Payment trail's clean. It's all lined up." "You sure it's him?" "Positive. It's Greg." She didn't even sound surprised. "Come in." I drove straight to the precinct, didn't stop for coffee or food. Just ran on adrenaline. The front desk buzzed me in when I gave them my name. I knew the place. I'd done IT work for them 2 years back, when their internal drives kept corrupting case files. That's how I met Navarro. Sharp as hell, always 5 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. She met me in a side office, plain desk, 2 chairs, one sad little plant in the corner. I set the laptop down and started walking her through everything. She watched the footage twice, checked the IP logs against the file access times. "You already did the hard part," she said, not looking up. "Now let's get a warrant." "What happens next?" "We flag his accounts, pull his device history, freeze anything tied to that logistics company. If he tries to move money again, we'll catch it. You just gave us the foundation. Now it's about tightening the net." I sat there gripping the edge of the desk. "You okay?" she asked. "Not really. But I will be once he's off my accounts." Navarro closed the laptop. "Good answer. Stay quiet for now. Don't let on that anything's wrong. We don't want him covering his tracks." I nodded. I knew what that meant. No blow-ups, no confrontation. Just act normal. I left the precinct feeling wired and numb at the same time. Part of me still couldn't believe it. Greg, someone I trusted with keys, passwords, my actual business, had turned around and robbed me blind. I started my truck, took a breath, and texted Jake. "Everything okay?" he replied. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering. "Yeah? Just busy. I'd tell him later. Not yet. Not until the trap was set. I walked in the front door like nothing was off, dropped my keys in the bowl, and hung my jacket up slow. Jake was in the kitchen, humming while he stirred chili. The whole house smelled like tomatoes and cumin. Normal Tuesday. Too normal. "You eat yet?" he asked. "Not yet," I said, setting my bag down by the table. He kissed my cheek. "You'll want to grab some bread. Chili's thick tonight." I nodded, went quiet again. My phone buzzed. "Greg. OMW in 5. Just checking pickups." I didn't reply, just locked my screen and kept my face blank. 5 minutes later, Greg walked in like he owned the place. Same cocky grin, same old hoodie. He clapped Jake on the back and tossed his keys onto the counter. "Smells good in here," he said. "You always cook like this, or am I just lucky?" Jake laughed. "You show up at dinner time enough, it starts feeling like a pattern." Greg looked at me. "Just came to check the week's pickups." Saw a couple flagged on the shared calendar. I forced a smile. "Yeah, we're all good. Caught up. Sales have been crazy lately. Tons of online cash flow." He raised his eyebrows. "That right?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone light. "Stuff's flying off the shelves." He gave me this proud little nod, like he was taking credit. Like it was his win, too. The audacity nearly made my eye twitch. We sat down around the kitchen island. Jake passed bowls, Greg took 2 helpings, and talked like nothing was off. About halfway through, he shifted the topic. "Man, money's been tight lately," he said, scooping a chunk of cornbread. "I swear these medical bills and gas prices. It's like you can't catch a break." Jake nodded. "You're not wrong. We've had to scale back a bunch." Greg leaned back in his chair and looked at me. "That's why I think families should help each other out more, you know? Like, when one of us is up, we pull the others with us. That's how it should be." Jake agreed. "Families gotta stick together when times are rough." Then Greg leaned forward and locked eyes with me, real serious. "It's only fair the successful ones help the ones who ain't there yet." There it was, the line. I didn't flinch. "I totally get that. It's just hard knowing where to draw the line sometimes." Greg shrugged, like it was all just casual talk, but I saw the edge in his eyes. He was testing the water, seeing if I'd bite. "Yeah," he said. "I mean, it's not like you're hoarding yachts or anything. You're doing good. I see the growth. I've been around long enough to know the numbers are climbing." Jake jumped in. "She's built something solid, all by herself." Greg smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Exactly. She's a boss. That's why I figured I'd check the schedule. Thought maybe I could take on a few more runs, help keep it moving." "You still got that old van running?" I asked. "For now," he said. "Barely." The mood dipped for a second, like he wanted someone to feel sorry for him. Jake cleared his throat and changed the subject. "You guys remember that thrift spot over in Maple Ridge?" "I heard they're closing down. Whole place half off." Greg half listened, kept glancing my way. He wasn't there for chili. He wasn't there for small talk. He was setting up the next move. I kept smiling, kept my tone friendly, didn't show one damn crack. Let him feel comfortable. Let him think I was still clueless. He stayed another 20 minutes, then stood up and stretched. "I'll check in tomorrow. Might swing by the unit, see if anything needs shuffling." "Cool," I said. "Appreciate it." He left with a full stomach and a cocky grin. I watched his taillights fade down the street. He thought he was playing chess. What he didn't know, I already had the board flipped. About 10 minutes after he left, I was clearing bowls when I heard Greg knock once and push the door open again like he still lived there. "Hey," he said, glancing at Jake. "Mind if I grab a quick word with her out in the garage?" Jake shrugged. "Yeah, sure." I dried my hands on a dish towel and followed Greg out, keeping my face blank. He shut the garage door behind us and leaned on the workbench like we were about to share some business strategy. "This won't take long," he said. "Just between us." I crossed my arms. "Go ahead." He took a breath, like he was gearing up to say something noble. "I need about $30,000, he said, real calm. "Short-term float. Just a few weeks." My courier service hit a wall with some insurance payout delays and fuel expenses stacked fast. I didn't blink. "That's a lot." "I know. Believe me, I hate asking. You know I wouldn't come to you if I wasn't desperate." He put his hand over his heart like he was delivering courtroom testimony. "I just need the wire to hit so I can get square. That's all. I'll pay you back within 60 days, maybe less." So that was the angle, a favor, a loan. He was trying to rewrite the whole story, take what he already stole and make it look like I'd agreed to it. Clean up the crime by pretending it was a handshake deal. I kept my voice even. What's it for exactly? Operating costs, he said quickly. Some vendor issues, back-end contract stuff. My accountant's on it. I just need something to hold me over while we sort it. I tilted my head. Pine Bluff Freight Solutions, that you? His eyes flickered, just for a second. Yeah, he said, forcing a casual shrug. That's the LLC I've been building. Legit freight company. I've got a couple clients lined up already. I looked him dead in the face. You've been running that under the radar. Trying to, he said. Startup stuff, you know how it goes. I paused just long enough to let the tension hang. Let me think on it, I said finally. Look at my books, see what I can move. Greg lit up. That'd be huge. Really, you'd be saving my ass. He reached out and slapped my shoulder like we'd just made some big brother-sister pact. You won't regret it. I'll get back to you, I said, already done with the act. He left without saying bye to Jake. Probably didn't want to get asked more questions. Probably thought he'd nailed the pitch. I waited until his car pulled off down the street. Then I pulled out my phone. Text to Navarro. He's trying to clean the theft. Pitched it like a loan, ready to move. She replied less than a minute later. Warrant in progress, stand by. I stood there in the garage, lights buzzing overhead, still gripping my phone like it was a detonator. The guy had the nerve to come into my house, lie to my face, and try to flip the script like I was the one who owed him something. I didn't feel angry anymore, not even shocked, just sharp, focused. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about making sure he never pulled this crap on anyone else. Not me, not Jake, not whoever came next. The clock was ticking. My phone lit up before 7 a.m. I was still in bed staring at the ceiling. Jake had just gotten up to shower when Greg's name popped up on the screen. I answered without much effort in my voice. Yeah. You think you'll be able to swing that loan? He asked like we were picking a lunch spot. Possibly, I said flatly. Just need to check a few balances. He chuckled. Oh, you're the best. Seriously, family's lucky to have you. I didn't respond. Just let that hang until he said he had to run. I hung up and slid the phone under my pillow. An hour later, Navarro called. I sat up the second I saw her name. We got him, she said. I stood. You're serious? Raid team hit his house and business location just after 6. He was home. Tried to act confused, but his face went white when they pulled the laptop. What did you find? Falsified invoices, wire transfer logs, dummy contracts. He kept paper backups too. Sloppy stuff. All dated, all under your client names. I felt my throat tighten. He saved that crap. Greg's smart enough to pull it off, dumb enough to leave receipts. I walked to the kitchen, put her on speaker, and opened the fridge just for something to do with my hands. She continued. There's more. Turns out this isn't his first time. We found a similar paper trail tied to your cousin Ashley's towing company. Same method, false job logs, money rerouted to a freight account he controlled. I stopped cold. Ashley, are you serious? She never pressed charges, said it was a loan mix-up, family drama, but she still lost money, almost $12,000. I leaned against the counter. My stomach twisted. He's built a whole pattern, Navarro said. Now we've got proof. You think he'll get jail time? With this amount. Yeah, and you documented everything. If this went to trial, he'd be cooked. But if he's smart, he'll plead. I closed the fridge without grabbing anything. I wasn't hungry anymore. Navarro's voice softened just slightly. I know it hits different when it's someone close. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, I didn't know it ran that deep. You did the right thing, she said. Most people never speak up. I hung up a minute later and just stood there in the middle of the kitchen. Jake walked in with wet hair and a towel slung over his shoulder. You good? He asked. I nodded slowly. Yeah, it's happening. He didn't ask what I meant. I think he already knew. By noon, Jake was blowing up my phone. I ignored the first 2 calls. Didn't want to have that conversation over Bluetooth while stuck behind a semi on I-70. Third call, I answered. What the hell's going on? He said immediately. Greg's been arrested. I let out a breath. I'll explain when I get home. He didn't say anything else, just hung up. When I pulled into the driveway, he was already out on the porch, pacing back and forth with his arms folded tight, like he didn't know whether to punch a wall or wait for me to make sense of it. Inside, my mom sat on the couch with a tissue clutched in both hands. Her face was red, nose running. She'd been crying for a while. Jake came down the steps as I parked. "You're seriously not going to tell me what the hell happened until now?" "I couldn't," I said. "There's a process. I wasn't about to risk the case by tipping Greg off." "He's my best friend," he snapped. "You think maybe I should have had a clue." I held up a hand. "Let's go inside." We stepped in. My mom looked up with glassy eyes. "They said he stole from your business. That can't be right. He's always helped you." I walked over to the coffee table, pulled my laptop out of my bag, and opened the folder labeled Fraud, Greg. "I didn't want to believe it either," I said, "but I'm not guessing. I've got everything documented." I played the camera footage first, Greg entering the warehouse after hours, unlocking the storage unit, digging through boxes like he was on a mission. Jake leaned over and stared. "No way." Next, I pulled up the click logs, time-stamped mouse activity, file access history, vendor payment routes. Finally, the transfer records to Pine Bluff Freight Solutions, all traced back to my office system, with Greg's login. "He used his access to take over $30,000, I said. "Scheduled fake deliveries, faked invoices, faked everything. It's all right here." Jake didn't say anything, just looked completely floored. "He seems so normal," he finally said. "I thought he was just helping out." "Said you needed the backup, said you were drowning in orders." "Helping out doesn't mean stealing," I said. "He didn't make a mistake. He planned it." My mom covered her mouth. "I trusted him," she said quietly. "I trusted him to handle my bills while I recovered from surgery last year." I stopped cold. "You let him manage your accounts." She nodded, voice shaky. "He offered. Said he'd keep up with the statements so I could rest. I didn't want to argue. I was on pain meds half the time." I looked her dead in the eye. "You need to check your accounts, right now." She reached for her purse without a word and pulled out her checkbook, her hands already trembling. Jake sat down on the arm of the couch and rubbed the back of his neck, staring into space. "You seriously think he stole from her too?" he asked. "I don't think," I said. "I know what kind of person he is now. If he had access, he took advantage." Nobody said anything after that, just the sound of my mom's fingers tapping numbers into her bank app. Her eyes went wide a second later. "There's money missing," she whispered. "More than I remember spending." Jake turned to me like he was waiting for permission to be mad. I nodded. "Yeah, go ahead. You should be." I packed the laptop and walked to the kitchen. I couldn't sit there any longer. Behind me, I heard Jake mutter, "Unbelievable." And my mom say softly, "I thought he loved us." He loved the access. The fallout didn't stop at my front porch. Over the next few weeks, the calls started. First, it was Uncle Ray. "You really couldn't just keep this in the family?" He said like I dented his truck or something. "30 grand ain't worth ruining your brother's life over. You should have handled it privately." "He's not my brother," I said flatly. "He's my mom's second husband's kid, and he's a grown-ass man who stole from me." "Repeatedly?" Ray huffed. "Still family. Still blood." "No," I snapped. "He's not blood. And even if he was, that wouldn't make theft a family discount." He hung up on me. A day later, my cousin Trina messaged me on Facebook. "You sent your own brother to jail over bookkeeping mistakes." I didn't hesitate. This wasn't a mistake. It was pre-planned theft. He faked delivery orders to siphon money. He knew exactly what he was doing. She never replied. By the end of the week, I'd heard some version of the same thing from 5 different relatives. "You should have kept it quiet. Family doesn't press charges. You embarrassed us." Nobody wanted to talk about the fact that Greg had broken into my system, faked documents, and rerouted money like it was Monopoly cash. They just didn't like that I'd made it public. Meanwhile, Jake was spiraling. He'd come home from work quieter than usual, barely touched his food, barely touched me. One night, he just blurted it out while we were folding laundry. "I feel like I should have seen it," he said. "He's my best friend. I vouched for him. I brought him into your business." I paused, holding a towel mid-fold. "He used your loyalty to get to me." Jake looked down at his hands. "I thought he had your back." I shook my head. "He had my passwords." We didn't say much after that. My mom kept trying to play mediator, calling every couple days with some new line she'd clearly rehearsed. "He's sorry." He panicked. He didn't know how to ask for help. "He should have asked," I said. Not stolen, not lied. Not built fake invoices and rerouted cash to some fake-ass logistics company like he was running a shell game. She sighed like I was being difficult. But you're okay now, right? You got most of the money back. That's not the point. I just don't want this to tear us apart. It already did, I told her. The worst part was how casual everyone acted. Like 30 grand was just a number. Like trust could be stapled back together with one apology and a guilt trip. Even Jake, as much as he said he understood, was still struggling to square it in his head. You think he meant to go this far? He asked one night in bed. He made 5 separate transfers, I said. Scheduled fake pickups. Accessed my files on a Sunday night. He had weeks to stop. Jake rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling. I just can't believe he'd do that to you. That's because he wasn't doing it to me. He was doing it for himself. The room went quiet. All I could hear was the fan spinning overhead and my own heart thudding against the pillow. None of this was about misunderstanding. It wasn't panic or desperation. It was choice. Over and over again, Greg chose to take. And now I had to live with the fact that most of my family cared more about keeping peace than keeping people honest. The courthouse smelled like old paper and stale coffee. I sat in the second row behind the prosecution's table, arms crossed, jaw tight. Navarro was 2 seats down, flipping through her notes like it was just another Tuesday. To her, maybe it was. To me, it felt like I was watching a slow car crash in real time. Greg sat at the defense table in a blue button-down, no tie. His lawyer, some clean-cut guy who looked about my age, whispered in his ear until the bailiff called the case. State versus Gregory Allen Whitmore. He stood when the judge walked in, didn't look back at me, didn't even glance around the courtroom. Just stood there with his hands folded in front of him like a choir boy. His lawyer opened with a statement about miscommunication and temporary financial hardship. Said Greg never intended to harm anyone. Said the money was always going to be paid back. That this was poor judgment, not criminal intent. Then Greg took the stand. I messed up, he said, voice low but clear. I thought I could borrow and fix it later. I didn't think it'd get this far. He kept it short, polished, rehearsed. The prosecutor didn't even respond. She just motioned to the AV team, and then they played the recording. It was from my garage, the night he asked me for a loan. You make good money. It's not like you'll miss it. His voice filled the courtroom, confident, entitled, not desperate, smug. I watched the judge lean forward slightly, jaw clenched. When it was done, the judge looked at Greg like he was trying to decide whether to speak or throw the gavel across the room. This wasn't a misunderstanding, he said. This was deliberate. You had access, and you exploited it for personal gain, not once, repeatedly. You stole from someone who trusted you. Greg stared down at his shoes. You didn't just commit wire fraud, the judge continued. You used your relationship to disguise it. That makes it worse. Then came the sentence. 3 years. Restitution of $47,000. That included the money he stole from me, Ashley, and the other fines tacked on. I didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't feel much of anything, honestly. Greg was cuffed right there in the courtroom. They didn't give him time to hug anyone. Not that anyone showed up for him besides his lawyer. He didn't look at me once. Outside, Navarro pulled her sunglasses down and nodded. You handled this like a pro. I didn't feel like one. She half smiled. Feelings got nothing to do with it. I stood on the courthouse steps for a second, looking out at the street, listening to the traffic pass. It was over. Or at least the part with the courts. Jake hadn't come. He said he had work, said it'd be too hard, said he didn't know how he'd feel seeing Greg in cuffs. I didn't argue. I didn't ask him to come. But it was hard not to notice the empty space beside me. 6 months later, I was back at work like nothing ever happened. At least on the outside. Orders were steady. Sales were finally climbing again. I was rebuilding what he tried to gut. Greg served just under 2 years. Good behavior, they said. He's working nights at a warehouse on the South End now, packing pallets, running forklifts, real humble stuff. He sent me a letter once, 2 pages, said he understood if I hated him, that he was in a dark place back then, and hoped maybe someday we could talk. I didn't answer. I tossed it in a drawer, unopened. We haven't spoken since the sentencing. Jake and I stayed together, but things shifted. I could feel it in the way he hesitated when I brought up work stuff, how quiet he got when someone mentioned Greg's name. He still blamed himself, even if he never said it out loud. We got through it, but the lightness between us didn't come back right away. My mom ended up moving in with her sister a few towns over. She found out Greg had drained part of her savings too. Small withdrawals, just enough to dodge alarms. She cried on the phone for an hour after checking her account. Said she felt stupid. Said she didn't know who to trust anymore. I didn't have much to say. I knew the feeling. The rest of the family split down the middle. A few backed off completely. Others still called to check in. But I could hear the judgment tucked behind every pause. Uncle Ray told me at Easter, I should have handled things differently. Family money stays in the family, he said. No, I replied. Money you steal gets reported. That's how it works. He shook his head like I didn't get it. Like I was the one who broke some sacred rule by protecting myself. Let me be clear. I didn't report Greg because he was family. I reported him in spite of it. He broke into my storage unit, faked delivery orders, rerouted 30 grand behind my back. That's not family help. That's calculated theft. And if someone thinks love means unlimited access to your bank account, they don't love you. They're using you. I've rebuilt everything since, cleaned out every system, put new locks on every door, digital and physical. I still take help now and then, but nobody touches my accounts, not even Jake. You don't get to gamble with my life's work and call it love. Not anymore. Not ever again.